We can see the screen back there. Awesome. Thank you so much. Welcome to my thesis proposal meeting. I really appreciate your presence today here. Um, so my thesis is on patient or visitor-led verbal aggression on healthcare workers. I will start off by providing an overview of workplace aggression, followed by the research process that was used throughout. So to get things started, why is workplace aggression so much in healthcare workers? It's 5 times more as compared to any average worker out there. The risk even surpasses that faced by prison officers and police staff. And ever wonder why? It is because they're always in direct contact with patients and visitors. Therefore, it's very important we study about this topic. Before I dive any further about anything, I want to give a disclaimer of the terminologies used in my thesis as well as in this presentation. So, workplace violence and workplace aggression are kind of interchangeable terms, but they're not quite the same thing. Workplace aggression is a very broad term, and workplace violence is the extreme form of aggression. So, a big takeaway is every violent act is a form of aggression, but not all aggressive acts are violent. I'll talk more about in upcoming slides. So, workplace aggression is just not one thing. It's a mixture of so many things. It's a spectrum of behavior. Kind of at the severe and most severe end is physical aggression, which has the most overlap with violence. It can include anything like kicking, beating, slapping, or sometimes even stabbing the other person. It can lead to serious injury or can harm the other person. On the least severe end is what we have incivility. As the name suggests, it's somebody not showing civil gestures. It includes rudeness, impolite behavior, or and a lot of researchers believe that it has slight overlap with verbal aggression as well, which is the most common form of aggression. But I think it's both of them are different, as incivility does not include a deliberate intent to threaten the other person, which is very important to aggression and which includes in verbal aggression. So verbal aggression is anything like using abusive language, non-verbal gestures that are threatening to the other person. Now I'll give 3 different scenarios to explain it further to you. So something like in civil behavior would be take an example of a nurse who's trying to do a IV procedure to the patient. And the patient may be saying a remark like, did you learn this online? This is a very rude and impolite remark directly on her character. But this does not include any threat to the person. However, if this was the case of verbal aggression, this could have been something like a person drawing their finger across their throat, or maybe even saying, I want to kill you, or I want to kill her. That would be verbal aggression. It could have led to psychological trauma. Up next, I want to talk about physical aggression. If the same patient would have grabbed the nurse by the hand and kicked her, it could have either led to injury, and that would have been physical aggression. A key note I want to make here is not all physical aggression leads to physical injury, or not always you will see any wounds or cuts or bruises. So that's a difference, but both of them are really important to study. So now, why patient or visitor-led verbal aggression? Because it affects the safety of the healthcare workers. In the sense, it's the first warning sign that comes prior to physical aggression, which can often lead to injury and harm. Secondly, it also affects the employee's mental and physical well-being. For example, sleep, PTSD disorder, stress, anxiety are just all symptoms of it. And what it leads to? It can lead to turnover, as employees will feel less satisfied at work, more disengaged at work, and it ultimately affects the organizations. Now, what have the past meta-analysis have done? They have either looked at the prevalence of verbal aggression, or they have combined the source of aggression, meaning that they have here supervisor and co-worker together and have not separated them from patients or visitors, which is a key thing. And why should we separate the source? So the source must be separated for 3 main big reasons. Either we are over or underestimating the true impact, or we are failing to account for the unique effect of the outcome associated with patient or visitor aggression. And lastly, depending upon the source of aggression, the strategies to combat verbal aggression will vary in organizations. So we must separate the source. And that is what I'm doing. I will be the first one to separate the source of aggression, and I'll be looking at the predictors of patient or visitor-led verbal aggression and its outcomes on healthcare workers. And this is very important to do. And up next, I will start what I have already achieved. But before telling what stages I have taken in this meta-analysis, I want to give a larger, the overview of the larger study. For example, here, the study is divided into three parts for now. Part one was done by our very special John Little, who's sitting here. He worked on just physical aggression. Part two is something what I am doing here, standing right here. I am only focusing on verbal aggression. And then apart from Lisa, we have two other external PIs who will be combining our theses together and will be working on a patient or visitor-led verbal as well as physical aggression. So everything will be combined in the larger study. So now what stages I have already done? First stage, I looked at a lot of keyword and did a broad keyword search in 4 databases. And those 4 databases led to 8,297 studies. These all were peer-reviewed studies. But because there were so many databases used, there was a lot of duplicates. So I removed the duplicates, and this led to inclusion of 5,126 studies that went to stage 2. So in stage 2, I had a team of undergrad and grad RAs who were trained, and they looked at the title and abstract and screened for 3 things: that each study should include patient or visitor-led aggression only. So any kind of aggression, but it should have patient or visitor-led aggression. It should have aggression towards healthcare workers only. And lastly, it should be a quantitative study. So qualitative study were a big no-no here, and this led to inclusion of 498 studies. In stage 3, team of senior, undergrad, and grad RAs looked at the full text articles and screened for 3 things. The first was a bivariate relationship between patient or visitor-led aggression with at least one construct of interest, and it must have some sort of usable statistics that we can use to compute the average effect size. And this led to the inclusion of 68 studies in my thesis. Now you guys must be wondering, like, Simran, what did you do? I was spot checking everything. Are they making any mistakes? Is there any question they have? Anything? They had so many questions. Everything went in the maybe folder, and I went in and looked at those maybe and discussed it with Lisa and John, and then we moved forward. So that was the part I was doing here. And the training, don't forget about that. I trained them. Up next is stage 4, and here we looked at the coding procedure. So the team was further divided into 2 parts. So we had the undergrad research assistant, and then we had the grad research assistant. The undergrad research assistant only extracted the demographic characteristics for us. Any information about sample size or something like sample characteristics, nurses or doctors, all of those were collected here. On the other hand, the grad research assistant, including me, collected all those usable statistics that were a bivariate relationship between patient or visitor-led aggression and between a construct of interest. All construct information was also collected here at this time. Anything like measurement scales used or the reliability of that scale. Everything was collected, and we had spreadsheets to organize all the data here. So now, after I successfully propose my thesis and it gets approved, I will be doing other stages. So after proposal, I will be making construct categories so we can code it. So in the past, we had our principal investigators, external principal investigators, who looked at some studies and they found out 3 outcomes and 3 predictors that could be used. While we were coding, we found out that there was a subset of studies that we need to revise our coding list, and things changed here. So from 3 outcomes, there were 4 outcomes. From 3 predictors, there were 2 predictors. And something similar we are expecting for my study. But maybe it might not be so much of revision, or maybe there will be a lot of revision because there's so much overlap in the topic. So after this process is done, graduate research assistants will code the categories of the constructs individually, because we want to look at the inter-rater agreement. I will be calculating that. And then in case there's any disagreements between the coders, we will, have research meetings and talk about it and come to an agreement. Then for the analyses, first thing will be the statistical conversions, because there are so many studies that did not report a correlation coefficient and just reported a usable stats for us. We will be converting all these stats into a correlation coefficient, which is required for us to compute the average effect size. After this is done, I will be conducting the analyses. I will be using artifact distribution analysis using the methods from Schmidt and Hunter, and I'll be adjusting for any reliability, any measurement reliability, and correcting any sampling error. And this all will be conducted in R and using the site meta package. And then once this is done, I will be also doing moderation analyses based on the data availability in my study. And this will be done on the sample characteristics. So something like type of worker, nurses versus doctor, something like unit, emergency versus psychiatry. Or I can also include age or tenure, more experienced employee versus something who is newer to it. And that is it. After I'm done, those were the stages I'll be doing. I really appreciate your presence here and my family also on Zoom. Thank you. Thank you for bringing the food and coming here. Any questions? We are open to it now.